again.
Welcome, one and all. I hope everyone's really excited for this one. The Temple Daily Telegram Sports Podcast for Week 9.
I know I am. We
got a whole bunch of exciting games. Actually, I was just looking at the schedule for the first time 2 minutes ago. That's not true. It was about 5 minutes ago.
5 hours ago.
Yeah.
You're lying to our readers.
We got rivalry games. We have playoff spots. We have key games that will help teams get into playoff positions. So a whole lot going on this week. This is Josh Weaver with Greg Willie, as always.
Hi.
With Daniel Zepeda, as always.
Howdy.
And Marcus Hood, as always.
Buenos dias.
Oh.
Just with no curly fries this week.
No fries. A drink, though. Just to keep,
Gotta have my sweet tea, man.
Hydration.
Yes. So let's get to it. The rare week where we don't have a Thursday night game. All District 12 6A games are going to be happening Friday night. And those games are Temple at Waco, Belton at Killeen Ellison, Harker Heights at Coppers Cove, and Killeen Shoemaker at Hewitt Midway. Shoemaker gets its first win since 2015, and then they have to go play Hewitt Midway the next week. Going to be tough to string together victories.
Midway's last district loss, 2013, at home to Killeen Shoemaker.
Boom.
I don't think any of those players were stopped.
If they're still playing, we have an investigation on our hands.
Moving on to District 8, 4A, Division 2, Salado at Madisonville. That's a big one for the Salado Eagles. In District 10, 3A1, Academy at Jarrell, another one of those games, those swing games. Those two teams we figured all along are going to be fighting for that fourth and final playoff spot, and now they're playing each other. So a big one there. Maynard New Tech at Troy, not so big. And then Rockdale at Cameron Yo.
Is that an important one?
It is for those folks over there, for sure, and for a lot of people around. Battle of the Bell. District 8 3A2, Rogers has a tough test at Lexington. District 8 2A1, Moody at Bruce Villetti, one of those rivalry games. Another rivalry game in 13 2A2. I skipped one, but anyway, Granger at Bartlett. And then up in District 13 2A1, Rosebud Lot at Thrall. In 14 1A2, Buckholtz at McDade. And in TAP 6-man Division 2, District 2, Kerrville, Our Lady of the Hills at Holy Trinity Catholic. And idle this week, Killeen, Gatesville, Holland. I think the only team in our area that's clinched a playoff spot.
Holland
already?
Hornets.
Yeah. Going into this week, they already have their spot locked up.
And we know that Buckholtz has not clinched a spot yet.
No.
This is their first district game.
And Central Texas Christian is also off. Unfortunately for the Lions, they go 7-0 in non-district play, and then open district with a loss to a previously winless squad.
The head-scratcher result of the year.
Yes.
And it wasn't even that close of a game, right?
No.
3-touchdown game?
Yeah, so Lions are going to be using their off week to get back in shape and figure things out, because obviously their district slate is going to be a bit more difficult than their non-district one was. Yeah.
I mean, if you lose to the team in district opener that hasn't won a game, you're already up against the wall.
Yeah, for sure. In one of those only. Well, how many teams are in that district? Let me see.
So,
So I guess
district.
so. Does TAPS? Did they?
A little bit
Yeah.
in years past, kind of divide the districts, because some districts, like in UAL, some districts have 8 teams, some only
Right.
have 4 teams. So, but in TAPS, a district with 8 teams, sometimes will have 5 playoff teams, where a 4-team district may only have 2.
Right.
Just so it evens it out.
Sure.
But
Well, either way, not the way they wanted to start out district for sure.
No.
The Lions are licking their wounds
Yeah,
this week.
that is, yes.
They'll be back.
So a couple of those teams that I mentioned that can clinch playoff spots are Temple and Belton with victories this week. They can secure those spots. The seeding won't be determined probably until the last, probably week of the regular season, most likely. But
if you're Belton, knowing you'll be Division 1, you can start to peek ahead a little bit.
For sure.
Yeah,
matchups and all that. Yeah, but Temple is playing Waco this week. Waco has struggled since their since its opening win against the University of Trojans. New head coach Kwame Cavill, former Temple assistant. But, I was reading your notebook today, Greg, and that'll be in Thursday's paper.
Did you just finish it?
Yeah. The Wildcats aren't looking much behind them or in front of them. They're just mostly concentrating on the Lions this week.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, this is a game that, if you look at the records, you think this is going to be a cakewalk for Temple, and it might be, but, recent history shows that whenever Temple goes to Waco, it's a really hard game for Temple to win. They have won the last two, but, 49-40 back in 2014 and 48-45 2 years ago. So, and that's a game Temple trailed by 10 points in the fourth quarter. So this probably isn't the same level of a Waco team that they faced those years, but I don't think Temple wants to take this game for granted. They know this, a win gets them into the playoffs, keeps them on track for district championship, at least a shot at it against Midway next week, which is obviously a big game that a lot of people are starting to talk about. And but in Temple's going to be really hungry to beat Midway next week, because that's a school that's had its number the last half decade basically. But we'll get to that game next week. This Waco team is struggling, like you mentioned. They really got pounded by Shoemaker last week, and you don't expect a team that's lost 27 in a row to beat you by 37 points, but that's what happened. And it was good for Shoemaker to get off the schneid and
Right.
get that first win. I think they'll collect a couple more possibly before the year's over. But I think what the big emphasis for Temple this week is they've gotten off to some hot starts. The Belton game, the Killeen game, or the Ellison game last week. Then they've kind of hit a lull in the middle part of the game where they turn it over or have 4 punts in a row or just kind of some empty possessions. I think they're looking for that real sharp, consistent, all-around game where they put this thing out of doubt by halftime and get a lot of subs in there in the second half. So,
Yeah. Belton's actually kind of experienced some of that too throughout district. Obviously they lost that game to Temple, but Belton has consistently gotten off to quick starts and then hit weird lulls maybe late in the second quarter.
Yeah.
And then picked it up again when the third quarter has started, and then a lull again, toward the end of the third quarter. I think, really, I think both Temple and Belton are just they're confident teams. You don't want to flip the switch on and off all the time. But you're right. They both of those teams need to start playing consistently through 4 quarters because they're going to have to do that in a couple weeks here when the playoffs start.
No doubt.
But speaking of Belton, I guess and a quick start. They were up 24-0 last week in their victory over Killeen. Jason Stevens, for the second time this season, blocked a punt and recovered it in the end zone. You don't see that happen very often, where you get a bounce that's like so perfect, and then you get to go score a touchdown.
Does he have a nickname yet?
I don't know.
You seem like he makes a lot of plays.
Yeah,
game-changing plays.
Yeah. No, he's definitely a playmaker.
We need to work on that. We'll put Marcus
I'll
on.
Daniel's coming up with nicknames right now.
That'll be my homework for next podcast.
Sweet.
Are you Googling nicknames for guys with the last name of Stevens?
You know what? You wouldn't think it was that hard, but
But
I'm gonna say playmaker.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
playmaker.
we can do that right now for sure.
Better. Was that Michael Irvin? Did he go by playmaker a little bit?
He did.
Back in this
Yeah.
conversation?
Yeah.
Hopefully Jason's keeping it a little cleaner off the field in Belton. But,
I'm sure he is.
we're gonna work on that nickname for him.
Yeah.
Jason.
But yeah, Belton's got a few playmakers on its team this year. So they were up 24-0 and pretty much rolled to 38-20 victory.
Not a bad Killeen team either.
No. That
Not an elite team, but
Kadarius
solid.
Marshall, he's a really good running back. He went for over 200 yards, but most of them were just between the 20s really. He scored a couple short touchdowns. The Kangaroos did have a couple second half touchdowns, but they were down 38-7 before they scored 2 of those. But this week Belton has Ellison in Killeen at Leo Buckley, where the Tigers are 7-1 since 2014. They've won 7 in a row there, I think is what it is.
They love the Buck.
Yeah, it's not it's close by, so there's always a decent Belton crowd. Not a difficult road trip.
Rudy's barbecue.
Rudy's barbecue. Yeah. But you saw Ellison last week, and they do have a couple playmakers in quarterback Breezion Spiller and running back Ty Hill. Belton head coach Sam Skidmore, it's like, yeah, we got to make sure we don't give up too many big plays to those guys. And if Belton does that, I don't see them having too much of an issue with the Eagles. Belton's definitely got to take care of the football. They turned it over a couple times in the rain last week.
Could be a good chance to see if Belton can get its running game going too.
Yeah, it happened a little bit last week with Aguilar that he had his best game, 98 yards on 17 carries, I believe, both season highs. And they also got DeMonte Smith going, who hadn't seen much action in the last couple weeks. But Connor Carruthers, the quarterback, continues to just throw it around. I'm not sure they were expecting to throw it this much all season. Maybe they were. I don't know. But he's already got 1,800 yards passing and 20 touchdowns, eclipsing his season totals from last year. So I don't see Belton changing too much. But, yeah, getting the running game going against Ellison, which I think he yields quite a bit of yardage.
Yeah, Temple's two running backs.
Yeah.
Overton and Jackson had, I think, 311 yards and 5 touchdowns last week.
Yeah.
So that might be worth seeing if you can pound these guys on the ground along with throwing them.
Right. So Temple and Belton can clinch playoff spots with victories. Neither is going to, suffer much if they lose Friday night. Particularly Temple. A loss for Belton would be its second, but they could still clinch a spot, I believe, next week when they play Waco. So not a ton of pressure on these games, but like we've been saying, both teams want to play a full 4 quarters.
And still a remote shot of a 3-way tie for the district championship.
Yeah.
Or also a 3-way tie for that 4
with the other teams.
Cove, Killeen, and Ellison.
Yeah.
Maybe Marcus said that might be likely.
Here we go.
The big debate.
Hey, it could happen. I just don't. I mean, the past few years have taught us, in that district, kind of when those teams are together, kind of expect anything. But I don't think we'll see a 3-way tie for any position this year.
Yeah.
And I know that's kind of weird to say, considering it's a 9-team district. So there's a lot that can happen in it, but I'm just not going to predict it.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe it could be a 3-way tie for last.
It could be that too.
Well,
real quickly,
it's going to be, but
mention that Salado-Madisonville game in 8-4-8-2. Salado coming off a 33-13 loss to Lorena. The Eagles are now 1-2 in district, and Madisonville is 2-2. Madisonville currently is a half game behind Robinson in 4th place, and which puts Salado in 5th. So obviously a big one there for Salado on the road as well. Need to pick up victories here pretty quickly to get themselves back into playoff contention in that district. Mm-hmm. But I think we should move along to 10-3A1 and the 2 big matchups in that district. Just real quickly with that, the Academy at Gerald game. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on that one. Academy played pretty decent against Yo, I think, last week in the rain, but just didn't get a whole lot going on offense, and Yo just kind of ran it at them. Gerald was off last week, so they're getting back into it. And I don't know if Gerald hasn't been in this position in a couple of years. I mean, they've been out of the playoffs pretty much from the get-go. So it'll be interesting to see how the Cougars respond.
This is, you hear like must-win games.
Yeah.
This is probably as close to must-win as I think as you can get for either one of these teams, especially Academy, because next week they got the open date and then at Rockdale to finish. This is really your last best chance to win a game and get to 3-3, or 3-2 it would put them at going into that Rockdale game in a couple weeks. So if you're Academy, you have to win this game. And if you're Gerald, next week they're at Rockdale, and then they go to Maynard New Tech. That should be a win. So, I mean, it'd be really shocking if the winner of this game doesn't make the playoffs, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at Troy, Rockdale, and Cameron Yo as the 3 front runners, especially after Troy's win over Rockdale last week. Those 3 teams, like they're going to be 1, 2, and 3. So, essentially, yeah, like you said, the winner of this game. And I think, as Josh alluded to it at the beginning of the podcast, we've kind of said this all year, the winner of this game is probably going to make the playoffs. And I think the big question here, Gerald's kind of had a couple of off games going into this one, and I think their quarterback was injured. I'm not sure if we have the update on his health, Heron Rodriguez, who has been pretty much everything for Gerald. I mean, if he's healthy, Gerald could win this game. Again, I don't think any of us have looked into his status yet, but if he's not, it's going to be a lot more competitive. And I don't know who to pick. I honestly don't. I mean, if I knew the injury situation on both teams, it'd be a lot easier. But I'm not going to give my pick away.
Yeah, I mean, we saw during non-district that Gerald was capable of making some pretty big plays on offense. They haven't done that in district play.
That Troy game kind of took some wind out of
Yeah.
their sails.
Yeah.
It seemed like.
You know, I have to go back and look at the box scores to see when the quarterback had gotten
been-
hurt or.
It's been, what, 2 weeks at least? Or
Okay.
something like that? Or-
Yeah.
And 2 rough weeks. I mean, they played Yo and Troy back-to-back weeks. So, I mean, that's, even for the best of the teams in that district, that's no easy task. And then when you're without your starting quarterback, a guy who can run the ball, and he's proven the ability to pass the ball as well, that's even tougher to do. But really, both teams deserving. Academy kind of had the down year last year a little bit. Paul Williams has stepped in his first year as head coach there and got off to a rough start. I think they were 0-3, something like that, but won 3 in a row after that and have really kind of turned things around. So it'd be nice to see them to get in the playoffs just for that Academy community, especially with what they've had to overcome this season within the community themselves. But then also Gerald. I mean, they snapped their 17-game losing streak. Going winless last year, and then snapping that early this season, and then showing that they are definitely competitive, if nothing else. So to Amos Davidson over there as well, he's done a good job in turning things around, and they've got athletes, they've got guys that can make plays, and unfortunately, whoever loses this game will probably be on the outside looking in come playoff time. So you hate to see that. You'd like, in a perfect world, both of them to get in because both programs deserving. But at the same time, that kind of adds even more fuel to the fire of, whoever wants it more, whoever comes prepared. And like you said, Marcus, that quarterback situation, that's going to be a big telltale of who comes out on top in this one.
Well, before we get too deep into this podcast, I think it's time to start talking about the Battle of the Bell. I'm sure we have maybe 4 or 5 listeners ready for that.
Just
Four
maybe just a couple,
or 5 of our 17 listeners who are waiting for this discussion. Rockdale at Cameron Yo, Milam County rivals, Battle of the Bell. 2 teams that figure to make the playoffs. We got the reigning 3A Division I state champion against perennial
Right.
state contender in Cameron Yo. Yo is undefeated in District 3-0. Rockdale just lost to Troy. Which means if Rockdale beats Yo, things can get quite interesting at the top of the district. But let's open up the floor and talk about this one.
I was just, before we get too far ahead, I was going to nominate Troy for win of the year.
In Troy it is for sure.
Well, for sure. I was going to say maybe in the area.
I mean a massive win for sure.
Yeah, I mean,
for Ronnie
because
Porter
normally
and the
that
Trojans.
district kind of holds to form. You see Troy being in the playoff race, but rarely pulling off a win over an elite team. And I mean, that was a big time win.
Marcus's
I'm-
tweet after the game, he says Troy is for real.
Yeah, and they are. I mean, from the beginning of the season when they played Toledo, I know we want to talk about the Battle of the Bell, but Troy, obviously, from the beginning of the year when they played Toledo, all they were a running team. I mean, Zach Grabasic, toss left, toss right, try up the middle. Now that they've gotten into district play, they've opened up the passing game a little bit. But still, against Rockdale, it was just give the ball to Zach, let him run, and Rockdale couldn't stop him. Now, if Cameron Yo has a kid that can do that, and we know that they can with Nico Vargas back there sometimes, Rockdale may have the same type of issues. But this is the Battle of the Bell, and Rockdale, I mean, they're good. Don't get me wrong. And like Jeff Miller told me after the game, we always tend to rebound and play a lot better after a loss. And, that loss is going to be in the back of their mind. They want to, prove that they're still the team to beat. So they're going to come out gunning for Cameron Yo and try and win this bell 3 years in a row, which I'm not sure when the last time Rockdale's had it 3 years in a row would be. And
Don't you think Cameron has just as much motivation with all the points they've allowed the last 2 years to Rockdale?
well, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at it this year, a lot of those kids in Cameron played in this bell game the last couple of years, and you take an 80 what was it, 80-54 loss 2 years ago, and then 63-34 loss last year. Those are eating at you if you're in Cameron, and you want to get that bell back. You want to get the bell back. You want a district championship. You want to go back to the state title game. I mean, all these things are. I mean, it's Cameron football, and until the playoffs start, there's not a bigger game in this district for Cameron or Rockdale than this game right here. And last year, just to show that anything can happen in the Battle of the Bell game, it was 12-7 at halftime. 12-7. The final score was 63-34. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Yeah. And that's the Battle of the Bell in a nutshell for you.
Yeah, definitely. Daniel's getting his first taste of it, I think, this Friday.
Oh, so Daniel drew the short straw.
I guess so. I've been told that.
You're going to have to fight the traffic.
He's about to leave right now so we can go get a parking spot.
I'm just going to go now. No, I mean, it's interesting. Last year, I didn't get to go to the game, but I did the preview story for it. And with Brashear and over at Yo and Jeff Miller over at Rockdale, both of them really kind of downplayed it a little bit. Both of them were, Rockdale was, Cameron Yo not so much, but kind of going through district. And, kind of downplayed it. Everyone knows the emotions that go into it. But then, interesting enough, I talked to both of them this year, and they're both pretty hyped for it. They were both very kind of wearing their emotions on their sleeve. They talk about what it means to the community, what it means to the players. Brashear, as he won it 3 times as a player for Cameron Yo back at, I think, from 89 to 91, and then when he joined the coaching staff there in 2004, they won it like 8 out of 12 years. Before he took over the head coaching job just a few years ago, but still has not won it yet as a head coach. So 0-2 right now as a head coach in the Battle of the Bell, and that's something that's kind of eating at him. Obviously, he's not going to make it all about him, but definitely kind of wants to get that monkey off his back, as he told me. Because it's not just any regular game, besides the playoffs. I think, Marcus, like you said, it is the game. It's the game to be at. It's the game to play in. It's one of those games where memories are made and legends are kind of born in a way. So it's not just another game, no matter what people want to say or what the players try to say and whatnot. Jeff Miller, he really kind of emphasized that what makes Yo so dangerous this year is that they're just so well balanced on both sides of the ball, but especially on offense. You can, as he said, you can load the box and try to stop the run against their talented running backs, but at the same time, when you load up the box, that just opens up their passing game, and they've got playmakers out there in the field, and they can make plays, and all of a sudden they can score anywhere on the field for you. Marcus giving me a note here. Jeff Miller, since he took over there in, 2006, I believe, something like that, he's 6-6 in Battle of the Bell. So and that's another point. This series, I think all time, it's like 42-21 Cameron. So for years they've really owned the series. But at the same time, over the past 10 years, it's even. It's been 5-5, and then even, as Marcus just told me, over the past 12 years, it's 6-6.
And they had that playoff rematch a few years back,
Yeah,
too.
so Miller's technically 6-7 against Cameron Yo, but
right.
6-6 in the Bell Battle.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's really tightened up. Jeff Miller made a comment. He goes, there's a lot of people over in Cameron who kind of still view Rockdale as the little brother in that rivalry. But when you put up 80 one year and you put up 63 and however many points that was in the second half last year, I mean it's hard to kind of say you're the little brother in that rivalry. We kind of mentioned it before. Rockdale looking for their 3rd straight win in Battle of the Bell series. If they pull it off on Friday, it'll be the first time Rockdale has accomplished that since 1966 through 68. So,
yeah, that's what you were wondering.
if anyone can,
only 50 years ago.
yeah, if you can think to what you were doing back then, good for you. I don't. So, but.
Were your parents even alive then?
Ooh, I don't. Maybe one of them. I think one of them was. I don't know about the other one. But it's Rockdale's only done it once before, and it was way back then. I think Yo has done it a couple of times. But really, I mean, the rivalry's really intensified over the past 10 years. Both teams are clicking right now, and really. As important as the game is to the communities, I mean, there's playoff implications with this game. If Rockdale beats Yo, and then Troy takes care of business, and the other 2 teams take care of business, there's a very real possibility that Cameron, Yo, Rockdale, and Troy could all end the season with one league loss. So then you're sitting with your top 3 teams. They're all tied for first place, and it just shows how competitive this game is and how big that Troy win was last week against Rockdale.
I think this is Marquette, you've been different places in the state. I would say this is a top 10 rivalry in the state of Texas.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's hard to quantify which. There's like a Lufkin Longview, there's Permian Midland Lee, things like that. But, I mean, you just talked about how long they've played, how good both of them are, how close they are to each other, how it's back and forth. They both won state here in the last, 5 years. It would be hard to find ones that are much better than this.
And when you get all the TV stations to declare it the game of the week,
right?
I mean, shoot.
Yeah, it's definitely not just top 10. I'd put it top 5, if not maybe number 1. I mean, there are some good ones like you mentioned. Stephenville Brownwood comes to mind as well. Yeah. You mentioned some of the others, the West Texas Battles. Midland.
Sherman Denison, I think, is one that's been played a long time up there. But,
Yeah, I mean, like I kind of alluded to last week, it's good to have a rival that's, I mean, even if you're not in the same district, different classifications, if they're right down the road from you, play them, man. Because it brings the communities together. It gives the kids a playoff atmosphere type game. Gets them more prepared for the playoffs than, some of your other district opponents would.
It sounds like you might be calling somebody out right now.
I'm not calling anybody out, but there are some coaches out there that refuse to go and play a team that's like not in their classification.
Well,
and the other thing I wanted to just say about this, and not necessarily about the bell, but you talked about the possibility of a 3-way tie with Troy, Rockdale, and Cameron. After the game last week, when I was talking to Troy and Zach Robotchik, he said that they were gunning for the district title. And that's all fine and dandy, but I think if Troy's really thinking about it, they probably want Cameron to go ahead and win this game, because a Rockdale win could probably just hurt them more in a 3-way tie, because they only beat Rockdale by 4 points. So if Rockdale beats Cameron by more than 4 points and Cameron beat Troy by like 13, was it, or something like that? I mean, Troy's not going to win the district or be the top seed in the district. So really all they can do is probably be second or third, and your best chance to beat second is to go ahead and have Cameron take the top seed. The district title's nice, but a better playoff seed's even better.
Yeah. And I was just looking at Greg's notepad and reading Yo's record right now, 6-1 and 3-0. And it's tough. It's hard to say, for a program that's won, so much over the last decade. But I kind of feel like this, if Yo wins, it's a bigger statement for them. This is almost, it would be a statement win for them, which is hard to say for a team that's won so much. But considering the way that the last 2 games have gone, and what Daniel, you said, how Coach Brashear, he's 0-2 so far as a head coach, and the season they had last year. I just kind of feel like this would be a really good statement game, or can be a good statement game for the Yeomen, just to kind of see where they're actually at this year and what they have.
What's the over-under on this game? Because last 2 years there's been an average of 115.5 points scored. Yeah. So I don't know what Vegas is putting this high school game in Milam County, Texas.
I put it at 12.
I would say 8.
Just go for a low
I'm going to
score.
say 8.
Yeah. I think it's going to be like 9-6.
It could be. Maybe if it was last week, maybe.
They can put up some points, definitely.
Yeah.
They can also play some great defense. So.
Well, we've spoken about that rivalry and long-standing rivalries and all that stuff. We got a couple more on the in 2A with Bruce Villetti hosting Moody. Bruce Villetti is 2-2 in district, so this one is pretty important for them. When you look at it on paper, they should beat Moody, which has struggled so far. Just 1-6 overall and 0-3 in district. Bruce Villetti is right now tied for 4th with Italy, which beat Bruce Villetti. So the Eagles need to get this one and take care of their rivals for sure. But then moving down into 13-2A2, Granger at Bartlett. Probably not as magnificent of a matchup as it has been in the past, but still a meaningful rivalry for those programs. Marcus, you probably know a little bit more about that than I do, since you've been here a little bit longer. But
yeah, and Greg and I were talking a little bit before the podcast. This is probably a much better game if you go back to like the 90s when both these teams were really
What do you mean, probably?
well. Okay, yeah, because it's not. I mean, unfortunately, both these teams have some good tradition. Bartlett, they were a state power at one time. And so was Granger. And now Granger's trying to get back there. Bartlett's still trying to rebound, kind of recover. But it's always a fun game. It doesn't quite have the crowd draw that, is going to be at the Bell game. But, those communities.
What are they, 5 miles apart, something like that? I mean, they're very close.
Yeah,
maybe 5 or 6.
You could walk there.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't,
Yeah,
but
no.
you could if you wanted
can.
to. I mean, it'd take me like a day and a half to walk those 5 miles. But
Yeah.
But anyway, we're not doing the cross country podcast apparently. So,
Not yet.
but yeah, it's a fun little rivalry. There'll be a decent crowd on hand, I would think. Even though I don't think any of us see Bartlett winning this game. Granger should. Granger had a tougher test last week, and I think that was probably their biggest test of the season.
Speaking of statements, that was probably theirs so far.
Yeah, that was what was that 28 to 38?
33-13 or something like that, was it?
Yeah,
No, 38-13.
I guess if I put my eyes on it, I could see that score a little bit. 38-13, there it is, over Bremond. And yeah, of course, Granger would have liked to beat Bremond the years past, but now that there's no kid named Paul there.
But there might be a kid named Paul.
Well, yeah.
It's just not Rashad Paul.
Well, it could be. I mean, George Foreman had 8 kids named George Foreman, so hey. But
Just going to throw out a little question here, just a rapid fire. You mentioned Granger. I was thinking, man, how far can this team go in the playoffs? Which area team goes the farthest in the playoffs this year? You don't even need to justify your answer.
we've
Oh,
tried
man.
to
Yeah.
tried to think about that over the last couple weeks, just how things have shaped up. I mean, Granger
Granger
maybe
looks good.
is
Holland looks good.
is the quick pick, but I mean, like Granger will have to likely play Mart
Yeah.
at some point, either in the I think the semifinal it might be if Granger gets that far.
yeah, I think we looked at this at the beginning of the year, and
Yeah.
I've forgotten now, but yeah, it was like if you get out of, I think it was the region that they have some
Oh,
tough
okay.
teams. If you get out of the region, obviously, well,
But I
that's
think-
true for anybody.
but then
But
it's
if
just
you get out of
Mart.
the region,
I think Mart would be the semifinal
think
matchup
so.
likely if Mart gets there. So, I mean, yeah, Holland. What they make it 3 rounds last year.
So yeah,
What if Cameron takes a 9-1 record into the
Yeah,
playoffs?
yeah.
I
know.
Maybe.
And we've seen,
Maybe.
yeah, I
You
think
know,
all 3
region-
teams,
yeah,
Troy, Rockdale, and Cameron,
yeah. That's
could
what
make
you were
good
saying.
runs,
Yeah.
I mean,
after last week.
because Troy's defense, I mean, they were pretty spot on. Yeah, they made some slip ups here and there, and if other teams have as much trouble stopping Herbachic as Rockdale did, yeah, Troy can make some noise in the playoffs. Rockdale's still solid. We know is solid. So
I mean, we kind of talked about it with Temple and Belton. I mean, if you play to your potential when the time is right, I mean, sure, anything is possible.
There's
but
a long-
it's can you put it together,
Right.
when the situation calls for it.
There's a lot of games to be played between now and potentially then, but if you look, if Temple keeps winning and Longview keeps winning, that could be 4th round regional final, state quarterfinal, if you will, game, with 2 13-0 teams. I mean, that's a lot of football before then, but
Yeah,
We'll
Temple still needs to finish
Or-
unbeaten in district
yes,
and and get that number 1 seed in Division 2.
yeah, that's the other thing. If Temple doesn't, keep
Because that
winning-
Longview
Yeah.
matchup could be much
could be
earlier.
by district in
Yeah,
Longview, Texas.
Exactly,
yes.
that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, and it's
Temple
funny because
doesn't.
Midway and Longview have a lot of playoff history the last, I think 6 to 8 years, whereas Temple played them back in the 2011 playoffs, but otherwise that's not a team they really run into. But Longview looks very salty from what I've seen, so Temple will probably have to run into them at some point, but you'd rather be in first or second week of December than November 15th or whatever
Yeah.
it might be.
Yeah. Good question, Greg.
Oh, thank you, Josh.
I'm not really sure how to end it after that, but I will say that UMHB is at home Saturday for the first
yeah.
of 2 straight.
We're changing our pick to UMHB.
Right,
Yes,
they're going to have
yeah.
the longest playoffs.
Yes, in the area. Yeah,
And not
and
have
they get to
leave-
do it at home
and not have to leave home
yeah.
until
and not even leave Texas.
not even leave
this
Texas.
year if they make it to the championship.
Shenandoah.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of good stuff on the docket this week. Hopefully, everyone can head out to the game of choice. Yeah, athlete of the week.
Ryan Pickett over
At
at
Granger.
Granger.
300-plus yards rushing and 5 touchdowns last
When you
week.
score 5 touchdowns, it's
Yeah.
pretty easy to say.
Basically, he did what the two Temple running backs did together. He
Yeah.
did that by himself.
Yeah, and
So
your feature is on the folks who paved the way for those 2 running backs last week.
big offensive line. Yep.
Yep.
I hear
The
they have
Hogs.
a pre-game or post-game ritual.
Oh yeah, free advertisement for Bill's Grill down across from the
Oh,
VA, I should say. Master Burger on the menu, and in a smoke-free environment now, unlike what Marcus and I used to endure.
that place always seems to be
Yeah.
fairly crowded. A lot of
It's open 24
Yeah.
hours, and it's within walking distance of the VA.
yeah.
Bill's got a
Seems
good
to be
grill.
popular, yeah. Good old
Yeah,
Bill.
it's
All right, I'm hungry now. I'm going over.
Yeah.
It's a greasy spoon, but it's definitely.
Jim's isn't open anymore, so where are you going to go late at night?
I wish the silverware was clean. A greasy spoon, that stinks.
Well, yeah, you gotta clean your own.
I'll bring my own.
Yeah, I just don't order anything that requires silverware or a plate. Just bring your napkin. Hey.
But we digress.
Yes. Enjoy your games, everybody. Thanks for listening for the last 36 minutes.